by the administration. I would also like to remind all speakers, board team members, and board members, because of their masks, to speak clearly and distinctly into their microphone so you can be heard by all these this evening, whether they are here in person or viewing us on Zoom or YouTube. Roll call, Mrs. Sitter.
Mr. Dean.
Here.
Ms. Philbeck is running a little bit late. Mr. Kobilka, I believe, is running a little late. Mr. Lindner.
Here.
Ms. Lupacek.
Here.
Ms. McClintock.
Here.
Ms. Newsham.
Here.
Mr. Winchell.
Here.
Mrs. Winchell.
Here.
Dr. Roberts.
Here.
And Attorney Senate.
Here. Item 1.02, approval of the agenda. May I have the motion for the approval of tonight's agenda.
Motion. Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against, nay. Motion passes. 1.03, pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty.
Is broadcasting a school board meeting out of Pennsylvania.
2.01, health and safety plan
MILLCREEK
update. Item
School Board.
2.01, the health and safety plan. Dr. Roberts will present
They've been quite
the
interesting.
revised health and safety plan dated February 28th, 2022. This will be voted upon once again on the February board meeting on February the 28th, 2022, upon the recommendation from Superintendent Dr. Roberts. At the conclusion of the presentation, I will ask the board if they have any questions they may have regarding the plan. When that is concluded, I will ask the public if they would have any specific questions regarding the health and safety plan that they would like to have addressed. At that time, outside of the questions from the public concerning the health and safety plan, any additional public comments, statements, or remarks will then be deferred until the visitor section of the agenda. Thank you. Dr. Roberts, will you please share the MILLCREEK Township School District revised health and safety plan at this time?
Thank you, President Winchell. It pleases the board and members who are present in the community. I will vacate my seat. Good evening, everyone. So good to have you all with us today. So, as always, we want to certainly start and ground important
Hi, Letty. Let me see where the volume is at. His mic wasn't very loud. How's that? What about now? I was gonna try something else. Let me try a different stream. This Zoom thing is really crappy. Hang on. Be right back. Don't go away.
Who are self-reported.
Is that better, guys?
Yes, if you want to. I have a couple questions for you, Attorney Senate. So you talked to us about stays that came from Upper Sinclair and Northern Allegheny. How have those played out?
There are two cases, one in federal court and one in the Third Circuit. An appeal, the North Allegheny and the Upper Sinclair cases were brought by parents of students who were immunocompromised. Temporary injunctions were issued against both those school districts, preventing them from going to universal masking. Both those cases are now pending before the court. Both those cases have argument schedules for March, and that's the status of that case, both those cases.
And Warren, they lost their case.
The Warren School District was the school district that did not follow the original order of the Commonwealth Court, and they were sued in federal court here in Erie County. And in that case, the court entered an injunction against Warren County, stopping them from not following the Commonwealth Court order. And also, those parents, as part of that case, requested attorney's fees from the school district for their requirement for them to bring the case in the first place. That case was resolved ultimately, but the Warren School District lost the case by not following the Commonwealth Court's order. And so that's why MILLCREEK School District and every other school district followed the Commonwealth Court's order until the Supreme Court reversed it. And then we followed Erie County's order until it was taken off the books. And at this point, we're following our own discretionary determination based on the school code and Department of Education regulations and the Department of Health regulations.
In your opinion, what is our legal liability by
Well,
making this decision?
it's difficult for me to identify where we ultimately will stand because we have the two cases that I just talked about, Upper St. Clair and North Allegheny, but we also have a case that was brought by the folks that are against masks that was filed with the Commonwealth Court. And I checked the docket of that case, and the only thing that's happened there is attorneys for the various parties have entered their appearance. There's nothing else that has been scheduled at that point. Once the attorneys for the various school districts that are named in the case will file a response to the case, then we'll know more. But that's all pending. So it's all pending at the present time. As far as our liability, it's still my opinion that the school district has the ability to determine what the appropriate health and safety protocols are within the school district. And it's within our power to do so. And that's supported by the Department of Education regulations, Department of Health regulations, and the school code. And so as far as until we get either a judgment on any of the three cases, we can proceed forward until the courts give us further guidance.
Fair to say we'll potentially suit either decision.
Either way, we won't get sued. I hope we wouldn't get sued because we're waiting for the courts. Any case that could have been filed has been filed. The people that are in favor of the mask have filed two cases. The people that are against the mask have filed a case. So it's going to be decided one way or another by those courts. The Third Circuit Court is a court of jurisdiction that we would have to follow. The Commonwealth Court is a court of jurisdiction that we would have to follow. So, if we get two opposite decisions, I don't know how that's going to work out, but ultimately we'll get a final decision. And in the meantime, we wait and see.
So back to the plan itself. We are still keeping social distancing in this plan as it currently is drafted, correct?
Yes, we are. We're going to continue to advise and guide around. Make sure we maintain a social distance as a protocol, part of the protocol.
I guess my question would be, what is the logic for keeping that? And how does that impact us when we say that our students don't have to wear a mask and they show up to a home basketball Trojan game and they're going to wear a mask in the basketball stands? We're not going to put them 6 feet apart in the basketball stands.
We're advising our students and adults to make sure that they're following prudent COVID mitigation protocols. There's no sort of logic behind it because if you are not masking, we've certainly seen our students and student athletes convening in places where there are large crowds. So it's not something that we're going to police. It's not something we can control. It's certainly a suggestion.
I guess where I'm going with this is, if we're going to take masks away and we're going to move down this path, then why aren't we moving all the way down this path to reenacting a normal school year, normal levels of activities, and then we're coming back to universal masking if and when we start to cross these thresholds? Because 4 feet, 6 feet, 10 feet, it's not going to make a difference in the room. We're not wearing masks. I think that if we're going down this path, then we walk all the way down this path. And then when we hit the off-ramps, we take the off-ramps, such as the 2%, and we start to recede what we can do. I think that we should move as far as we can back to the norm at this point, if we're going to take the masks away.
Thank you. Suggestion is noted. Mrs. Lupacek, to answer your question, we have approximately 580 students who are enrolled between ages 2 to 5, and about 100 in pre-K.
How many buildings does that break down over?
I can get that number for us.
Just kind of thinking about the 2%, because that breaks down over like 5 or 6 buildings, and that 2% is a really small number.
Certainly, yeah.
May I ask, please, about letters going home? Are we going to continue to send letters home, or are we not doing that? And are we going to continue with contact tracing or not?
Which letters are you referencing, Mrs. Mitchell?
A letter that would go home with a student that says, you will be in quarantine for the next 5 days.
As needed, yes.
So the letters will continue?
Yes.
Okay,
Again, our goal is to move slowly away from
okay.
that practice, because again, we're taking the next step towards normalcy. But that, as well as recommendations from some of our credible public health officials around why we should maintain some level of contact tracing.
Okay.
I believe we have Dr. Lewis present today that will provide some context for us.
Ms. Philbeck, you have
Yeah.
a question?
Thank you. My question, and I'm sorry I missed the first part of the meeting. I was having trouble getting out of campus. So my question revolves around the immunocompromised, whether it be students or faculty or staff. What protocols, parameters, options do we have for them if this is in danger to them?
It's an excellent question. And so, one of the challenges that we have, and certainly it's quite frankly, one of the decision points that I lose sleep over. Because while I believe that it's prudent for us to move back towards some sense of normalcy, I recognize that in our midst, and we've seen this, I am fully aware of many of the adults who serve our children daily who are immunocompromised. And the last thing I want to have happen is, because we're moving back towards this normalcy, someone within our midst is impacted. So do we have any protocols in place? We do not, which is why, although we're moving back towards mask optional, we'll continue to, again, guide and advise those of us who are choosing not to wear a mask to be thoughtful about individuals who are in our midst. So we do not have any protocols in place to protect those individuals.
So how would someone know that they're in the presence of someone that's immunocompromised?
They will not, unless the person tells them.
Okay.
And- And we cannot tell them.
Right. I understand that.
I was wondering, our threshold is 2%, correct?
That is correct.
And like in our smaller schools, like at Chestnut Hill, I believe that number, was it 6 or 7? I think it was right there.
8.
Was it
I
8?
think it was 8.
Okay, what I would ask, I think the number 2% personally is a little bit low, but that it would be exceed. So if the number is 8, if 2% is 8, that we don't stop at 8, we have to get to 9, we have to exceed 2%. See where I'm going? It gives you like one more body. I would ask if we would do that instead of as soon as we hit 8, we're done. Gives us, it gives us an additional 12%, the difference between 8 and 9. So, since it's such a small number, in the bigger schools, it's 25. That's not, that's a bigger number, but would you guys consider that we would have to exceed 2%, for this to go into effect? Because it's going to make the difference in the small schools.
I guess I would ask that chart that was shown up there earlier, Dr. Roberts, that showed Erie County case count over top of our case count. How often each school would have exceeded that 2%? If you pull that I think it was the second chart, Linda.
From
Yes, sir.
historically,
It was the graph.
Here's a graph. There you go.
So that's just a summation of everything. And we peaked at about 250. When we go through that year, how often would those individual schools have exceeded 2% where we would have to flip back to universal masking?
so I can give you some context, for example. So if we are looking at our data from the week of November 5th, I'm picking one of our random dates. We had Asbury was at was context 14, 3, and 1. District closed at 4 students. Del Valle at 1. And so again, it varied because as the graph indicated, there was a lot of fluctuation in our data. But it was very rare that we've had that. When we've had school closures, it's again, when we were following the DOH's guidance around either cluster or the number that we had during the first few months of the pandemic, which was a 10% threshold.
So about 25 weeks up there. That would be curious to me to know, out of those 25 weeks, how often would we have closed Asbury School or Chestnut School based on those numbers? I know you probably can't tell me.
I do not have the answer to that question at this time.
But Jason, wouldn't you agree though, that the last, 4 to 8 weeks is a lot different than it was 25 weeks ago?
Absolutely.
If you track the
Yes.
numbers since the beginning of
Yes.
February, they're all pretty much quarantining positive cases and therapies, and they think there's 8. The whole district is 6,500 kids. So I think that's part of the conversation why all the school districts are doing it, is the fact that Omicron is not the same as the previous severity of those earlier cases. So
Mr. Vilka, I can answer your question on I did the quick math from enrollment on Chestnut Hill. It's 7 students is 2%. So 8 is one more than 2%.
Right, so we would not go to masking at 7, we would have to hit
You'd
8.
have to 8. 8 is the 2 plus 2%. 7% is, or 2% is 7 students.
Right,
8
so
is
we're at
more
2,
than
but
2.
when we exceed it, see what I'm asking is that extra body, you're
Yeah,
going from
8 is the extra body.
7 to 8. 8 is mask, 7 is
It's
not.
already built in to
eight,
the formula.
eight is what I went over.
Your request is built into the formula already, Mr. Kabelka.
Okay. I did get some feedback on pre-K to 2. 8 schools house the students. I haven't gotten breakdown. Their tools working on that, but if we assumed an equal breakdown, that'd be 65 students per building. And that would be 1.3 students would be 2%. So when you hit 2 students at pre-K, you would be at your 2% threshold.
Helpful, thank you. Certainly consider that.
Did you say 2 students?
2 students.
2 students.
Because we're at 8 buildings. Now, that's assuming an equal distribution of students. They're working on that.
Yeah, I
now,
got you.
so
That's
It's
a
just
good
an
question.
order of magnitude for us to think of.
Good question. Any, Ms. Winchell?
Dr. Roberts, thank you to you and your team. I think you can see that there's been a lot of time and preparation put into the presentation, and we appreciate it. No matter what you do, people are always on the next step. Believe it or not, I had 2 contacts today asking about whether or not decisions have been made. This isn't directly related to health and safety, but related to COVID. Have decisions yet been made related to prom? There are a group of people that are under the impression that juniors are not able to participate in prom this year. Have we made those decisions yet, or are those down the road still?
Not able to participate in the junior prom?
Correct.
Junior,
That is
senior.
not true. I'm not aware of that. I know that we are in the space right now of making decisions around senior prom. As it stands, senior prom will be for seniors at this time. Certainly, we will continue to think about that as we work with the high school administration. Our seniors, like every other student group, have endured a lot. I think a part of the rationale is to allow our seniors, about 520 plus seniors, to truly enjoy the experience, these senior experiences with their cohort. I believe that because our high school administrators are student-centered, they will continue to receive input from our student government, from our student body, and that will certainly drive a final decision.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Ma'am.
I have a question. Can you clarify the recommendation for test to play? Because we say that fully vaccinated, asymptomatic, and these are contacts who've been potentially exposed. They can continue in their activity, but then we say they test again on day 5. So does that mean that the recommendation is that they cannot participate on days 0 through 4?
That is correct. I'm referencing page 12 of the Health and Safety Plan. 13. Starts in 12.
And I guess, can you explain the rationale for?
The test to play we're using to follow some of the best practices that we've seen with regards to test to play around the country. I think what this does for us, it certainly puts us in a much better place than we were in previously, whereby if a student athlete test positive or was symptomatic, they were out for a significant number of days, which impacted not only their own social emotional well-being, but impacted the performance of the team and certainly impacted their teammates. So I believe that this is a step in the right direction.
Well, I understand that. I guess just from a practical perspective, I'm going to assume that the player who tests positive probably takes 48 hours or 2 days to get their test result in most cases. And by that time, we notify the player who is a close contact. And by that time, the time they get their test results back, we're already at day 5 in almost every circumstance. I guess it's possible it can happen sooner, but just practically speaking, I'm confused by the 5-day timing.
Yeah, thank you for offering that.
Dr. Roberts, going back to what Mr. Linder said earlier about social distancing, are we going to continue to have lunch where the students are socially distanced and spread apart, including, K through 5 all the way up through high school? Another example is recess. We throw 4 classes out there together and we want to separate the classes. Are we going to allow those classes to mingle, or are we still going to try and separate and say this class over here and this class over here?
Absolutely, and certainly in the cafeteria, we will maintain the distancing with tables. But again, one can sort of easily unpack that by saying that, even though you may maintain that distance in the cafeteria, when they're traversing through the hallways, there's still the close contact. But I want us to think about the fact that usually our commute time between classes or from the cafeteria to classes is a lot less than 15 minutes, while when they're sitting in the cafeteria, it exceeds 15 minutes. So that is a part of the rationale. But yes, we will maintain some of the distance in the tables.
Thank you.
And to piggyback on Mr. Dean's comment, we're asking the students at recess to be separated outside. Why wouldn't we allow the students at recess that aren't masked outside to commingle together? Because right now, to Mr. Dean's point, the 4 first grade class are playing in 4 separate areas and they can't interact with each other.
That's freaking crazy. Outside even.
Now that we're going to take the masks off, they're outside. Why wouldn't we let them intermingle with each other outdoors?
We have not made that decision as far as I'm aware.
I agree with you, Mr. Linder.
Any other questions from the board?
I have one more.
Lewis, can you take the podium, please, sir? Thank you. Mrs. Lupacek, we will have additional information about the test to play and our testing offering for the clinic here.
It's
On
like
Monday,
here.
we'll provide you with an update to your question and additional information.
And here, the parents are afraid to speak out. They won't. They just comply and that's it.
Years, and I was at the wrong building for 20 minutes. So sorry if I missed the beginning.
So as I said, I missed the beginning, so if any of this is repetitive, I do apologize. We're still at high spread. Our numbers are significantly improved as to where we are. Our incidence rate is still over 100. We're at about 125 as of this past Friday. Our positivity rate is at 12%. The numbers to get below the high spread is less than 100 per 100,000 patients for new cases, and a positivity rate of less than 10%. We're definitely in the right direction. We're not there. We're still seeing people dying. I took care of a patient this morning. He will probably not be alive tomorrow. It's fact of life. And regarding the schools,
Student?
I think we are definitely on the right direction to go to mask-free. My concern is our vaccination rates are still poor at best. As of this past Friday, once again, this is all through the Department of Health. Our elementary school age, approximately 1 in 5 is fully vaccinated. Junior high, it's about a third. High school, it's about 40%. So our vaccination rates are still, in my opinion, very, very poor.
Oh yeah, because he's wearing a mask
That
even
is for
right
Erie
now.
County. I have no idea. It's not broken down into school district. Ours locally may be higher than that, but there's no way to tell. My concern is lunch. Plain and simple. People are able to come back now through the CDC. A lot of people in the infectious disease world do not agree with the CDC on this stance. But coming back after day 5, if you're improved and asymptomatic, you're still contagious. It's low. The risk is lower than the first 5 days, but you still are absolutely contagious. So our junior high, 30% are vaccinated. So if I'm sitting at a table, I'm one of the 30% that is vaccinated, I'm protected. However, 2 other classmates are not. That's really what I had. If there's any other questions for the board,
I want to send you the link in Messenger,
happy to
okay?
try and answer them.
Any questions from the board?
So Dr. Lewis, 0 to or under 100 incident rate will take us into moderate?
Correct. And we're right now at, as of this past Friday, the 18th, we are at 159.4. For better, we used to be up to 200-300 range,
Or text better.
but we're still above the threshold. I thought it was a lot lower. Just anecdotally seeing at the hospital, the cases are much down in the hospital. I was actually surprised by that, but that is the number that's pulled directly off the PA state website.
So Erie County just posted today, on average, 56 cases a day. And that needs to be scaled up to per 100,000. No, that is scaled up.
That's a day.
That's per
That's a
day.
day.
This is an incidence over a 7-day
100 per
period.
week?
Yeah, correct. Yes. And once again, this is data from Friday. It was last updated from Friday from the state.
I was just going to ask if you know if that data that you cited for children is, and I recognize that for the younger ages, they're not even eligible yet, but for the older groups, whether that includes a booster or that is just the primary course.
It's not, in my read of the website, it's not clear. It just says they've fully vaccinated, have received the appropriate number of doses in the appropriate time period. That's the wording per se. Some places I've seen that includes boosted, other places will add the tag to it being boosted as well. So I just don't know what their wording means.
Dr. Lewis, you have volunteered countless hours to Mill Creek community over the last 2 years. Thank you so much. I just want to say thank you.
That's my pleasure. I have a daughter here. I'll be honest, I'm selfish. The reason why I'm doing this is for her. I want her to be in school. I'm happy to do what I can to keep her in school, and that relates to everybody else.
Any additional questions before I ask if the public has any questions? Dr. Luce, maybe you just remain there in case there's some questions.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
So my question is, some of the other districts that have gone to mask optional have offered N95 masks. And I just wondered if that has been a consideration.
Yes, we actually have looked at the possibility of offering a mask, and it's cost prohibitive to us at this point. It's an exorbitant amount.
Okay, at this point, oh, Michael?
But I think what Ms. Philbeck might be saying, not for the entire population, but for students who should choose.
For those who need them. I'm again thinking of the immunocompromised, and I realize they can buy their own. I'm just wondering, as a, but, yeah, so it's for people that want them.
Thank you, Mrs. Philbeck. I'll certainly work with the team, look to see what we can do, even if it means reaching out to some community partners, and we'll try to make some N95 masks available in all of our schools. Don't know what that amount will be. It will not be significantly high, but we'll do that. Makes a lot of sense. Thank you for the push.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, at this point, we'll entertain questions from the public. And please use professional decorum, and the audience, please be respectful as you would like to be respected when you're speaking. Yes, sir. Can you speak loud enough so everyone from the home audience can hear?
That's all Bear County. The State Department of Health is not listed. No, I cannot.
Hey there.
Hey, how are you?
Good. I just keep my mic muted most of the time so the noise around me doesn't mess this
Good.
up.
I'm glad it's out.
Okay, next, yes?
I can leave it on right now.
Yes, Scott.
It's fine.
Yeah, you knew the doctor was gonna
Oh, yeah.
go that way. Yeah.
Hey, Jessica, do you have a question? Because you can make the comments during the visitor section, please.
I think I answered that question earlier. The school administration is desirous of giving an experience to our senior class at this time, where they can have this with only their cohort.
Jessica, I will add that we have 1,000 adults. I say this all the time. We have 1,000 adults in our buildings with 25 or 30 children in an enclosed room. So we are protecting them as well.
I can't hear the person at all.
I don't think they're saying anything.
Oh, well, this is what I don't get. If the adults, and let's lose some logic on this while they're talking, if the adults want the vaccine, they can have it.
So masks,
They could still wear masks.
do decrease the person's risk of acquiring COVID by 85%. There's an additional risk. I don't know the number, or excuse me, there's an additional risk benefit when people
Rachel,
are
Michelle,
also wearing them.
from your GM coalition.
Credit to the other individuals. Masking is not 100%. Unfortunately, it's not. If I wear a mask appropriately, I still have a 15% chance of acquiring it. Primarily, it's through the eyes. If I'm speaking with someone that is COVID positive and transmitting it, that 15% will decrease because they are not able to expel the viral particles.
Okay, to go with that, I have an actual graph from the CDC. It says, if we're standing here, one of us has COVID, one of us doesn't, 15 minutes. That's our limit for talking to each other. If I'm wearing a cloth mask, or if you're wearing a cloth mask and I'm not, 20 minutes. That's our protection. If you're wearing a surgical mask and I'm not, 30 minutes is our protection. If you're wearing an N95 mask and I'm not, 2.5 hours is our protection. If 2 kids are wearing a cloth mask, 27 minutes. So you're going from 20 minutes to 27 minutes. And you're taking away my choice to not send my child to a school, or to send my child to school not wearing a mask. 7 minutes. I sent this all to you guys. This is from the CDC. I mean, you're going on CDC this, CDC that, and then to go on to the CDC again. The CDC's recommendation for those pre-K kids is exactly the same as it is for all the other kids. Why are we telling those little kids that they have to wear a mask? I will not send my child to pre-K with MILLCREEK in a mask. I will find someplace else to send him. I won't do it. And I can send you this chart from the CDC if you'd like.
My question is about extracurriculars. If we go mask optional in MILLCREEK schools, will all our activities be mask optional too? Like for the play, are we going to have mask optional at rehearsal, mask optional on stage, or is that going to be different?
It's mask optional across the district based on the threshold numbers. Yes, it's the same.
Okay, also I had a question about the test to play. You said a lot about vaccinated students, but the doctor just said 30% of high school students are vaccinated. So for the unvaccinated kid who is asymptomatic, how long do they have to wait before they can go back to their activity?
The same applies, the 5 days testing as it's written in the plan.
Okay, so after 5 days, they test negative, vaccinated or not, they can go back?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm actually surprised that nobody on the board pointed this out or asked a question, but why would you be willing to give unilateral authority to Dr. Roberts and the pandemic team and take it away from the board to make masking decisions in the future?
The
Anybody?
process will be quicker to allow the superintendent to react to the information as opposed to waiting to a next school board meeting.
Okay, who's on the pandemic team? We did get a list of, or we got a number last time, but where is a list located of who is on the pandemic team by name?
We can give you the positions of those individuals, and if it's not yet on the website, we'll make sure it's there. We'll
Oh,
get it
by
out.
name or by position?
Position.
Okay, so do I need to fill out a right to know who is on the pandemic team? Because I do think people that are making such serious decisions should be known.
No, if there is sort of legal guidance that allows me to sort of withhold their names, I will. And the reason I'll do that is because we have received a lot of vitriol against those individuals, a lot of attacks against them, and it is my responsibility to take care of the folks who are leading our district. So I'm certainly not opposed to sharing what the composition of the pandemic team is, but I believe it's prudent at this time to withhold their names. But if, again, legally I'm compelled to do so, then I will.
Okay. Oh, and then, so I think Janine brought up about the ESSER funding. When does it end? I know that this ESSER 2 ends and the new one goes into place on February 28th. If you just don't accept the next step of ESSER funding for ESSER 3, the health and safety plans end, correct? So you're saying, you know, we don't know when this health and safety plan ends. If you would just not take the money, you would have never had to be doing any of this. So why can't we just stop accepting the money for the ESSER 3 and I'm not saying that the health and safety plan, all of this has to go away forever right this second, but what I'm saying is you could still continue to work without being under all the obligations that come with accepting these millions of dollars and lock you into a health and safety plan for the next however many years, just like we're locked into having a pandemic coordinator in every single district for the next few years.
If your question is whether, first of all, there's erroneous information which suggests that the health and safety plan, we have to maintain a health and safety plan in order for us to receive ESSER funding.
He just, the solicitor just said that.
No, I didn't. I said that we have to have a health and safety plan if we receive the money, but the money is not connected to masking.
That's not what I said. I said if you don't accept the next round of ESSER funding, you don't have to have a health and safety plan.
Yes, that's true. If you don't-
Thank you.
If we don't have it, if we don't accept ESSER funds, then we don't have to have a health and safety plan, except we accepted the initial step.
ESSER 1 and ESSER 2.
That's right.
Have you accepted ESSER 3 yet?
We're in the process of doing so. We will maintain a health and safety plan to make sure that we have the appropriate funding to support the work, the initiatives we're doing. But again, I think we're conflating some issues here. I believe that it's prudent for us to continue to apply for SS funding so that our students, more than 6,800 students, can receive as many resources as needed to make sure that we're furthering their education and accomplishing the mission of the Mill Creek Township School District.
I appreciate that.
Thank you for that. I don't see any reason why we should leave millions of dollars on the table that will support our students.
Okay. Thank you for answering that. I just at least wanted to point that out to the community that there is an option to not accept the money and then the health and safety plan could be gone. So
Thank you.
whoever's next.
It's all tied to the money.
Thank you. Does anyone in this room listen to the alerts and information from the CDC? Doctor? Are you aware, doctor, that the CDC only provides historical data, the compelling data, as Dr. Roberts usually states, but the real-time data is not available? That's number one. Number two, are you aware, doctor, that the Johns Hopkins investigation research on masks, the conclusion from Johns Hopkins and their team of epidemiologists and all the other infectious disease physicians say they are useless? Are you aware of that, doctor? Or school board directors, are you aware of that? Are you aware that if you're counting on compelling data, Dr. Roberts and board, are you aware that Richard Perhax, the former solicitor of Erie County, denied me, under the right to know, redacting patients' names, the real so-called data that we see on all the graphs that are published by the local media?
I remember that guy.
Why did he deny me that information?
We can't answer that question,
And,
Mr. Alley. You'll have to
All right,
ask-
excuse me,
sorry,
Mr. Senate.
answering your
Excuse me, Mr. Senate. That's being rude.
What's your question, Lou?
My question
Answer the
is,
question.
are you basing the 2% on what? On positive? The tests are positive, or are they negative? And do you actually believe that? Have you investigated or asked the Department of Health how they come up with the data? Now,
If you want
unfortunately, that information is in common pleas court. Okay, I have one more question. There was a question that Mr. Senate answered relative to the tying in of money to a school district or a state. Is it related to the actual formulation of a health and safety program or the masks? And by the way, for Mr. Senate's information and for the board's information, 3 school board directors were removed from San Francisco. my attorneys and I
Louis,
have researched.
question.
All right,
Please. You
question.
didn't let Mr.
Can-
Senate answer the previous question. Let him answer the previous question.
Okay.
I'm not sure, you've asked like 10 questions, so I'm not really sure. The answer to your question, I have already answered that in regard to the ESSER funding. It is, we're required to have a health and safety plan. It is not necessarily linked specific, we have to fill out this form. This form does require, we didn't create the form is required as part of the statute. So we have to address the issue of universal or correct wearing of masks. We have to address it. It doesn't require us to have universal masking. So the money is not necessarily linked specifically to what the decision is on masking. We have to have it in the plan, but it doesn't, we have to answer the questions. But it's not specifically linked to that requirement.
Thank you. I wish you would put that in writing. This is a case from Justice Fraser, March 14th,
Is this a
1927.
question, Lou, or comment? Save
All
it
right.
for the comment
Yeah,
section.
a
You
que-
signed
a
up
question.
for it.
We're looking
Please.
for questions.
Please, ask the question.
All right, question. Can a school board director be removed from office
It's not
if they
related to-
fail for their duty and their oath of office when they do not uphold the U.S. and the Pennsylvania Constitution? Thank you.
Not related to the health and safety plan. And we have questions related to the health and safety.
I have a question for the doctor. How many school-aged children in Erie County have died from COVID? How many school-aged children in Erie County have been hospitalized for over 2 weeks?
Not a pediatrician, so I can't answer that. I do know of a case that last time I spoke, there was a patient that was.
How many
pediatric.
in total?
You have to let him answer the question. You've asked a question, he's answering the question. Please let him answer the question.
The
Oh, okay, sorry.
The patient was under 18. Patient was life flighted to Pittsburgh to Children's. She was admitted to their ICU. I do not know how long she was there for. I do not know what happened to her. I'm not a pediatrician.
Okay, but you're a man of data and recommendations, correct? You are, what are you, an epidemiologist or infectious disease expert?
Yes, infectious disease.
And I appreciate that. So how many children in Erie County have died from COVID or been hospitalized for over 2 weeks? You don't know. But we're basing all this health and safety plan on not knowing these numbers? Board, do you know these numbers?
If one child died because.
No.
Disease,
Sir, let him answer the question.
if one child
please.
died because of a essentially now preventable disease with masking and vaccinations, that is too many.
Question number 2. Can you contract COVID being fully vaccinated?
Yes.
Yes. Can you contract COVID wearing a mask?
Yes.
Okay.
My risk of death is much, much.
How many children have died?
Don't know.
Okay.
Can I interject?
Mhm.
Only because I had looked this up. Now, I do apologize, my numbers are only as good as February 2nd. I understand it's February something else. In Pennsylvania specifically,
No. Erie County.
well, the date, it wasn't given by Erie County, it was only given by Pennsylvania. It was but from the CDC website. I can give it to you or not. It is from birth to zero to birth, birth to 1, 0 deaths, 1 to 4, 0 deaths, 5 to 14, 0 deaths, but 0 to 17, 24 deaths during the same time period. There were 44 for the same age group, same time period, 44 deaths occurred from pneumonia, just kind of putting it in perspective.
Thank you.
That was from the CDC website for Pennsylvania.
One more question. What is the difference between Girard, Fairview, Corey in Erie County going along with Erie County positivity rate numbers? What's the difference between those schools saying, hey, mass choice, parents' choice, and right now in this district? What's the difference?
We are amending the plan or potentially amending the plan based on the board's action that it will be choice, but we're using the 2% rule. I don't know what those other districts are using.
Okay, That doesn't answer the question. What is the difference? We're going by cases in this county, correct? Doctor, correct?
We don't.
Positivity rate in this county, correct? As a whole, to decide health and safety plans for these individual school districts, correct?
That's not true.
No,
That's not true.
That's not true. We're going by the schools.
Mr.
Local
Mitchell,
schools,
can we have
2%
Dr.
local
Lewis
schools.
excused from the podium because I don't believe Dr. Lewis should be
Yeah.
here having to respond to these questions, should be
Thank you,
addressed to
Dr.
the
Lewis.
board. And
Appreciate
thank you,
your
Dr.
time this
Lewis. You've been
evening,
helpful.
All the effort
Thank
you've done
you.
last year. Thank you.
Ms. Sitter, can you
Thank
bring
you.
the chart back up for us?
The historical chart?
Circle chart. It has nothing to do with Erie County numbers now.
Now or always?
It used to be Erie County numbers
Okay.
prior to this February 28th.
Okay.
But we're moving to local numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, so the difference
The one with
between
the
us and the other districts is a week or two, right? So Wattsburg last night, they did 2% based on their numbers, right? We're basing it on our numbers.
And your numbers are, I must have missed
The
this.
numbers are up here.
Okay.
And
Per
it's-
building.
It's based on the number of students per building, so 2% of the student population in each building. So I don't know if Gerard or Warren or whoever did it last night, if it was for the whole district or just each building, but we have so many buildings, that's per building, our school. So regardless of what Gerard or Fairview has done,
Right.
it's for us.
Specific to Milford.
For perspective, Gerard, Warren, they have one school per level. We have 10.
So how many, what is the highest positivity rate Mill Creek has had?
250 students per the whole district based on that previous chart.
And before that, I thought there was one over 300. I thought.
But what gives us a little bit of sort of encouragement, it is if you look at the data from the past month or so, you'll see the numbers going in the right direction. Case in point, as of today, we have 7 adults, 2 students, so 9. So that bodes really well for us, right? So for me, and I said this earlier prior to your arrival, I'm excited by and encouraged by the fact that I can come to the board with a recommendation for us to move towards mask optional or parent choice, because based on the current data, it is not likely again that we will exceed these thresholds. So parents will have that option, mask optional. I know that we also have public health officials who are saying that we're still not out of the woods. And so if you look at the entire presentation, you'll see that it's possible that sometime in the future, we'll pivot back. But as of right now, should the board approve this recommendation that I'm bringing to the board on Monday, we're going to be in a good place to make sure that mask is optional. I also shared, and I have to reiterate this, I am certainly concerned about individuals in our midst who are immunocompromised and those who are vulnerable in any way. Hopefully that's helpful. You're welcome.
So a point of clarification then, we're going on the 2% limit for the schools, but you've also requested the ability to expedite decisions based on either higher substantial rates in the county and in the entire district. So which takes precedent? Right now is a perfect situation. The levels in the schools are all below 2%, so we would be masking choice. But the doctor just shared with us that in the county, we're still at high. So that would be a situation where Dr. Roberts would have the ability with the pandemic team to decide on masking. So which one trumps the other? Which one takes precedence?
None takes precedent or trump the other. One of the things that I shared is we will always make the decision around where we pivot back and forth from or to based on a multifactorial approach. So no single data point will be considered. Certainly, while we recognize that Mill Creek Township School District is a microcosm of the larger community, we don't want to just make the decision based on Erie County's data. If we did, we will still be in a place where it's universal mask.
So this is a perfect situation to use as a hypothetical. It really isn't a hypothetical. What would the decision be for next week? The numbers for the schools are below 2%. The county is high. What would the decision be for next week regarding masking?
When we get to next week, you'll certainly make that decision as we continue to review the data.
So based on the data, if we pass the health and safety plan, we would be parent choice.
Mask optional parent choice. Based on the current
Unless Dr. Roberts and the pandemic team decided something different?
based on the data, the current data, based on the threshold that we shared.
I think we should make the 2% threshold a firm threshold. If the individual schools are below 2%, it's mask optional. regardless of county numbers.
My understanding, Dr. Roberts, would be his discretion would come into a case to call universal masking. So when the numbers escalate, he would declare universal masking, not the opposite, you know? If the numbers were above exceeding 5% or 10% across the district.
And I'll certainly remain open to, again, input from a number of parents who are in this room have been in communication with us. Again, when that information comes in and there's parent input, I will certainly remain open to having that input drive and guide some of the decisions we're making.
Thank you.
We do have a couple questions from online that's been waiting, so I'd like to give them an opportunity. Ms. Sitter?
Jan Olms, if you have a question, you could ask it now. If you had your hand raised to make comments during the visitor section, we're not at that area yet.
Hello.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, good evening.
Yes, what's your question?
I have 3 questions. I would like to know on this board, how many of you have looked at the paper I made you aware of back November 8th, 2021 from the NIH.gov Table 2E.
Why don't we have you ask all 3 questions and then we'll try to reply.
Well, I do want an answer from that because it listed ivermectin, and I made you aware at the time that it was sent to every hospital and every doctor. My second question would be to the doctor. Have you ever seen the NIH paper that I just mentioned? You go to NIH.gov, Table 2E. It clearly lists ivermectin that the FDA put on there that it was for therapeutic use.
And your third question?
The third question is, on the pandemic team specifically, how much money has been used to teach the students how to put on a mask and take it off properly and about their immune system? My granddaughter was sent home twice. Nothing was mentioned to her or me about the immune system. I'm a nurse, as I mentioned in November, and our body does have natural defense. There are vitamins appropriate per individual that the doctors can recommend to help our immune system. You keep giving data about cases. I don't hear any data from the NIH or even an interest in it. I'm sorry, but I have a question. How many have looked at that paper? And how much money has been spent by the pandemic team about teaching health and safety about our immune system? Every nurse that I know of has not taught it.
Thank you for the questions. I can certainly respond to the question regarding how much money has been invested for the pandemic team to teach health and safety or about the immune system. The answer is 0. Our pandemic team does not have as part of the responsibilities any classes to be taught or lessons to be offered to students around health and safety. As a practice, we have health and physical education teachers, and certainly there's a curriculum that they cover. Additionally, we have a number of science courses that may tap into some of what you're referencing, but we have not invested any money for the pandemic team to specifically go into buildings instructing students. Thank you for the question.
That wasn't my question. My question was, how much of the money have you spent through the pandemic team to teach the students or the teachers or the nurses?
I believe it's the same question. Unless I'm missing it, I certainly stand corrected if someone else wants to clarify. We have not invested any money through the pandemic team for them to teach the students.
Well, I'm sorry, but I think that would be a good investment.
Noted. I certainly will take a note of your comment and suggestion. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I didn't get an answer from the doctor, sir.
At this point, we are respectfully asking our community partners to direct questions towards the board. And Dr. Lois is also a valued community partner and a parent. And I personally do not believe, unless he so chooses, that he should be up there subjected to a number of questions being posed to him, unless he so chooses to answer.
Well, excuse me, he's giving data. I would think that the community that's listening to his data respectfully would have a right to know.
Thank you for your comment.
Okay, next person, please. Thank you.
Janine Mattern?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First, I want to thank Mrs. Winchell. She had brought up the fact of hearing that the juniors would not be allowed at prom. At 4:05 today, I received a response from Dr. Roberts when I actually asked him myself on who had made that determination and why. So I was a little confused on his response to Mrs. Winchell, because in his email to me, he says, "Thank you for your email and question. This decision is made by the school team with 100% support from yours truly. There is a desire by the school team to have a senior-only event and provide a space for this group of 500 plus outstanding students to enjoy these celebrations with their cohort. There will be events scheduled for members of the junior class to attend and participate." So in his response to Mrs. Winchell, does that mean there's going to be 2 separate proms? And I don't understand the need for 2 separate proms when all of these students were together at homecoming. The Bayfront Convention Center is huge. As Mr. Linder had mentioned about going down that road, we packed 2,000 students in the prep event center for a basketball game. Prior to COVID, when senior and junior were together for prom, we only had roughly 800-ish students go. The Bayfront Center is vast. If you're going to be putting them in schools together without masks, they can surely be together at the Bayfront Convention Center. So I'm just asking, what data points did you use? You had mentioned talking to students. Only 2 students that I know of actually spoke with the McDowell administration regarding this, as well as the advisor regarding this. But I will gladly pack the brick house for a coffee chat with juniors if you would like to get their point of view.
I will support the decision of our high school administrative team. I will certainly support the decision that they're making. They are on the ground talking with students, and I will support them 100%. I remain open to any additional conversations.
Okay. Next question from Kalini Marshall. Oh, she is up. Oh, yep. Please, Kalini, you have a question?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
My question is, the comment was made, 1 child. We lost 1 child to COVID. Okay, but 1. How many kids do we lose per year to pneumonia or to football injuries when they're no longer even able to utilize their brain properly? But yet we have kids in elementary playing tackle football. I mean, I understand, like, I don't want it to be my kid, but on the other side of that, we can't bubble wrap them either. So how can you say, well, if it's 1 kid, well, you still don't play tackle football and that's okay. How does that work? Can someone explain that to me?
My position, I've shared this before, my position remains the same. Any 1 child is 1 too many. Whose child is it okay for us to lose? Whose child? And I'll leave it there.
So the child that gets a concussion or ends up brain damage, that's okay as long as it's football, but not if it's a COVID.
Ma'am, may I respectfully offer that you cannot conflate, and you should not conflate, it's not prudent, 2 very different health categories. We are in the midst of a pandemic. I'm asking that we sort of allow our empathy muscles to grow. I do not want, and you should not want to have any person's child impacted by any disease, impacted by any football injury. But since we were talking about COVID, let's allow our empathy muscles to grow just a little bit. We understand the data, it has been shared. Thank you.
My other question would be that on a regular basis, there's a divide between the vaccinated children and the unvaccinated children. And my problem here is, if your vaccine works, then you should not be concerned about my vaccinated status, number one. Number two, how does that work? The vaccinated kids, don't have to test for this or, but the unvaccinated, that's a big deal. The unvaccinated children are the problem. If you can pass it and contract it while vaccinated. So what makes it my unvaccinated child different? I can't hear.
Joe
Can you hear him?
No.
The unvaccinated individuals, both children and adults, are much at greater risk of transmitting and acquiring COVID as opposed to anyone that's vaccinated.
Can you explain that? Explain the science behind this?
Okay, please.
I'm not going to take the time to explain my answer.
Please. Okay.
So I should believe that on blind faith?
That's not a question. So we're moving.
Okay, next question is from Amy Phillips.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Good evening. So my question is, while we do have this doctor who is concerned about the vaccination numbers and is concerned about we're still in our high status in Erie County, why are we not looking at the other side from maybe another doctor who's looking at more of the health part of it, and instead of being vaccinated, looking more into what kind of foods we're eating, how to take care of the immune system? Why are we not looking at both sides of it? And why are some of the responses that we're getting, they're only coming from one side?
The topic of today is the health and safety plan, not the issue of other health and safety of students. We do have health and safety programs within the school district that address the health and safety, all aspects of health and safety of students, which includes nutrition and other things. But that's not the issue for today. And
so if that's not the issue for today,
we're sharing with you the information that we have in regard to the health and safety plan that's on the table, to
right?
be considered by the board.
Right. So, but while we have a doctor who is, like I said, concerned about vaccines and all of the other numbers and things that are being thrown around, why don't we have another doctor who's not concerned about the vaccine part of it? Why don't we have the other side of it? Why are you guys only getting your information from this one man to help consider your decision?
I think that we're receiving information from and guidance from the Department of Health, CDC, all other sources, and Dr. Lewis has been a volunteer that is helping out the school district, and that's the process that we have followed.
Okay, so all of the sides that are all on the same side, basically. That's all. You answered my question perfectly. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Deborah?
Hi, everyone. Thank you. My name is Deborah Tackett. I reside at 5122 Amherst Road, Erie. I have two daughters in elementary school. No doubt you have a lot of emotions and a lot of feelings that will be expressed. No doubt you have a very difficult decision. I applaud you for putting a proposal together for moving forward with, the parents making a decision on their children being masked. What I would ask, my only question is, why are we waiting? My kids are watching the schools around us move to optional masks, and they're asking me if they can change schools. Enough is enough. And I was wondering if you know how many students have had COVID in total? How many individual student cases have had COVID?
Well, Dr. Roberts, looking that up, I'd like to respond that, when you take a look at the different school districts, right, I think a lot of it's just tied to when their meeting is scheduled. So you had Fort LaBeouf did that at the end of January, Corey on 2/14, Girard 2/14, Fairview 2/14 to be effective on the 22nd, by the way, which was just today. Girard, I think, was effective yesterday. General McLean 2/16, Harbor Creek 2/17, Wattsburg was last night, effective today. Air Quarries is discussing it tonight, as well as Northwestern is tonight. We will vote on Monday. Erie is not doing it, and Northeast is actually still conducting a survey, so they're not ready to vote on theirs yet. So it may not be the same exact time, but it's all within a week, 7 to 10 day window. And I think a lot of it's just logistics around when their voting meeting is scheduled.
And is there no way that there could be a special meeting to vote on that so that it could be implemented, the decision could be implemented next week?
The meeting is Monday to be implemented March 1st. It is next week, next Tuesday.
Right, but we can't implement immediately? Or are we implementing immediately?
We need a board vote, and the board meeting is Monday evening. And so that's our regularly scheduled meeting, and that's when the vote will be held on Monday, to be effective March 1st.
So the reason I asked about how many cases there were and how many students have had COVID is because I'm wondering if we're taking into account those that have natural immunity now. Both of my daughters had it, and now they're trying to understand why they need to continue to wear masks. I understand all of the data that is out there about masks reducing the transmission, but it can still be transmitted. And I am one of the parents who is comfortable sending my children to school with their natural immunity unmasked. And it starts to feel a little like we're being overlooked and discriminated against because we're listening to all of the feelings for people. And it's time to stop talking about the feelings. Leave it to the parent's choice. And you do not discriminate against anyone. If you want your kid to wear a mask, send them in a mask. If you're a staff and you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. I'm not asking you to not wear a mask, but asking those that choose, that would prefer not to wear a mask needs to stop. It's old and it's exhausting, and it's starting to feel like we're forgetting about those kids that have had it, that have natural immunity, and that are ready to go back to sharing their smiles.
Okay, Deborah, do you have another question? Or I hate to cut you off, but really need the comments during the visitor section, please, so we can have everyone who has a question to ask a question.
Deborah,
Well, my question wasn't answered, so thank you.
Dr. Roberts about to answer it.
Thank you for the question, Deborah. We'll have the number. We want to make sure we have accurate information for you at Monday's board meeting.
That'll be great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Last one online is Amy Smith.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So my question might not be the popular one right now, I guess, but so I have an immunocompromised son at J.S. Wilson Middle School, and I'm very concerned about the amount of kids who won't have masks on. He will have to continue to wear his, but are you saying that there's nothing going to be put in place as far as, I guess, contact tracing? I don't understand how that is going to work. And are the kids who come back from a 5-day quarantine going to be required to continue to wear a mask for another 5 days?
All excellent questions. Contact tracing is not totally off of the table. We certainly plan to make some adjustments to our contact tracing protocol. In terms of the second question, we will certainly convene as a pandemic team and have a detailed response for you at Monday's meeting.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Okay, that's the last one. Any additional questions from the public that haven't already been asked and covered and answered? Relating to the health and safety plan.
This is a very simple question. Can you please go back to the slide where you were talking about the communication and the notification of if it's going to be mass choice or required? I just want clarity on how that's going to be communicated to me as a parent as to what it's going to be that week. And also what day will you put out that mode of communication if it's going to be mass choice or mass required for the week? Yeah, the one that was, it was just up there.
Yep, right there.
Okay. So it'll be on Friday.
Yes, Friday by 2 o'clock.
Okay, and that'll be through a text message or email, just like any other sort of
Yeah,
communication.
Infinite Campus text messages, certainly we will have an email sent as well, and we will consider, depending on information, even using our social media sites.
Is there special consideration given to kids? Because my child is autistic and he's on a 504 plan. I'm just concerned that this back and forth, because I think it's just opinion, but it could be a little touchy with going, 1 week it's a mask, 1 week it's not a mask. I'm just wondering if you guys ever thought about it when you came up with this plan and this mode of communication for the kids that do have special intellectual disabilities to give into consideration, because I'm just more so looking for some sort of like a baseline, because that's going to be very damaging for him to keep going back and forth, and it's going to honestly confuse him and drive him bonkers. My question is, have you guys considered those kids, not the ones who are immunocompromised, but the ones with actual intellectual disabilities with the potential being disrupted by going back and forth?
It's an excellent question. We have a dynamic student support services team, and it's certainly something we'll put on the table for discussion.
Okay.
Later on this week. And so certainly we can be in touch and you'll hear what decision we've landed on. So thank you for that. Excellent question.
Thank you.
Yeah. We always keep in mind that we have about 19% of our students who are enrolled in Mill Creek Township schools are considered students with an IEP. And so we want to make sure that we are thinking about those students as well. Great question.
Yep.
While Dr. Lewis is coming to the mic, quick update. We've had 1,156 students have tested positive this year. So I think it's Deborah who asked the question, who's online, and for the benefit of the group, 1,156 students.
My question is just, correct me if I'm wrong. It's not the school or the school board or the district that decides to close the school. It's ultimately up to the county health department to come in and shut a school down. Is that correct?
They have some authority as far as I'm aware, but the health and safety department, as far as I know, have never, at least since the pandemic started, necessarily utilized that power that they have. They leave it up to school district choice. Yeah. Thank you.
I think you kind of covered this before, but what is the 2% based off of? How do you calculate that number?
So yes, thank you. I did share a couple of data points. One, I alluded to the fact that statisticians often use when we think about a p-value anywhere between.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I mean, like, how are we calculating that in the schools? Like, how did the chart with the numbers per school come from based on the 2%?
We decided on 2% as opposed to going back to another number. We looked at other percentages. When we started the pandemic, we utilized a 10% number. We believe this is a reasonable number. We've also considered another data point, and that is the number of individuals who are part of a cluster. That's the DOH's and CDC's record.
Dr. Roberts, based on the building population.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Are you
it's
asking
based
how
on
you
the-
find the 2%?
Yeah, it's
You
based
would
on the
take-
building population? Because I
Building
feel like I've heard a few
population
times
times
it's based on the
0.02.
number of enrolled students. So I just want clarification on which one it is.
It's enrolled students. That is correct.
So if we're only doing enrolled students, why then are we adding in positive cases of administration and teachers within that building?
We've chosen to put both because if you're in the same building where you're a teacher or student.
So why aren't,
No,
but
ma'am, can you allow me to answer the question, please? If you have both students and teachers and adults in the building, then the number of positive cases will impact everyone who's in the building.
I understand that, but if we're saying, I think it was like 11 kids at Tracy based on the student enrollment. But if you have teachers or administration positive, they go towards that 11. Why aren't we counting the whole building population if we're counting all of the teachers and students in that population?
We've chosen to go with student enrollment. I don't believe it makes a significant difference. I think
It
where we
would
landed
make
on
a
right.
significant difference.
It does not. It does not.
Yeah, so if you would have, I mean, following up on that, if you'd have elementary school would have, what, 40 staff?
Chestnut Hill has over 50.
50, so 2% of that is one. So for that situation, the number would swing by one. I understand. That's something
I
maybe
would
Dr.
tend to
Roberts
agree,
can
though, it
address.
should be the exact number, because if you have 50 in a building with 300, 2% of 50 is 2.
If they're counted in the numbers of positives, they should be in the numerator and the denominator.
Correct.
2% of 50 is 1.
Right, Mrs. Winchell? And Mrs. Newsham?
Apples to apples.
Yes.
I think the problem with that is that you have a lot of adults that are in a building at some time and not in a building at another time. If you included every single adult that could possibly be in that building, you're coming up with an unrealistic denominator.
But
I
I
would
think we
think-
could draw a line in the sand for full-time employees during the school day, and that's going to be better than just student enrollment.
How many staff? Eight, I mean, you're talking about 8 people across the district.
Where is the science?
My
Does
question
anybody
was,
else have a question? I know you've already asked a question, so do you, Troy, can someone else please have an opportunity to ask a question? Thank you.
My question, I wanted to ask Dr. Lewis if I could, if that's okay.
Well, why don't you ask your question? If Dr. Lewis chooses to respond, he can, but he's not here to answer
Okay.
questions in regard. These are questions to the board.
Okay, well,
Okay.
earlier, someone had talked about natural immunity. I think they said it over top. My son has not worn a mask this entire year to school. He's gone to school the whole year. He's not once worn a mask at school or on the bus. He has not gotten COVID. And the reason being is because he got COVID way back it was like the very, very beginning of 2020. And because he has such, great natural immunity, that's why he can still go to school and he hasn't gotten sick at all. So I guess if he'll answer it, I did work with him for a long, long time. I'm not going to set you up. My question to you is, I know you have a little girl and she's in the school district. If they say, okay, it's mask optional, I want to know what you would do.
Well, I'm sorry.
Why?
It's not an appropriate question in regard to his personal.
It's not,
I'm sorry, ma'am. Let me answer the question. Dr. Lewis is not going to respond to that question in regard to his personal family choice. And in regard to his child, that's not an appropriate question in front of this board. And we wouldn't allow
Okay.
that question. So does anybody else have a question? Well, okay.
No, I'm not going to answer the question about my daughter. The problem, please, may I? The problem with natural immunity is and this is even with the vaccines, we don't know how long they're good for. And here's a perfect example. Back in the 60s, when the measles vaccine came out, great vaccine, worked like a charm until 8 years later. It didn't work anymore. That's why we're required 2 MMRs. In 10 years from now, we'll be able to answer that question. But right now, nobody knows. All the papers that are out there, nobody can tell you how long that immunity, whether it's natural immunity versus immunity from the vaccine, nobody knows how long it lasts. And we will not know that for another decade.
Do you think the antibody tests should be done on, do you think that would be helpful or no? Chicken pox or, you get your titers.
Too soon to tell.
Too soon to tell.
Too soon to tell.
Student has been waiting.
Okay. Question?
Oh, sorry.
so my question was on the ESSER funding. How much money do we get from that, and what do we specifically use it for?
Well, the use of it is on the website. Every month, Mr. O'Toole does present a report on a board meeting of informational items. there's a spreadsheet out there, what is on there, what is spent and what is to be spent. So that is on and communicated each and every month. And
Okay,
it's a
then-
variety of things.
Then my overarching question with that is, I feel like if it's for, because we have a public safety plan, we get the ESSER funding, it should be spent about on like COVID prevention and masks and all that fun jazz. If we just don't have a public safety plan, then we don't get that funding, but then if it's not spent on COVID anyway, then why do we even need the funding? Like, why could we just not have a safety plan, not deal with mask social distancing or anything of that nature, and just not have the funding? I don't see the overall net harm in that.
Money's not spent entirely on COVID-related items. 20% of the SRS funds.
Yeah, I need to
that's
step away for a little
$10 million,
bit,
we can give you the
but I'm going to
specific
leave
amount,
it
is spent on
streaming, all right?
mitigating learning loss that many students have suffered as a result of COVID. So essentially, 20% of the allocation goes towards meeting the behavioral and social-emotional.
But if the requirement for the ESSER funding is we have a public safety plan, shouldn't it be spent in relation to that? And then if that is, then why can't we just get rid of the funding and get rid of the public safety plan overall?
That's an excellent question for the individuals who wrote the AARP funding in Congress.
Dr. Roberts, the ESSER fund is in the millions, correct?
That is correct, sir.
And I'm against masks, okay? I'll state it right here, but I'm also not against giving up millions of dollars. We're short already. We're paying a lot more for substitute teachers because of the whole situation, it tripled, so we can use it towards that, if I'm not mistaken. We use it for a lot of other things, not just for that, but that's money that we need to operate. So I'm going to say I would be 1000% against not getting it. We need to look at the fine line and see that's money that we need, and it's millions of dollars. That's my opinion.
And I would also encourage us to go to the website and you'll see a breakdown of how we spend the funds and you realize how beneficial the funding is. Great question, but check out on the website. We have an update there each month. Yes, ma'am.
Do the people on the board know that there's certain allocations within the ESSER funding? Don't quote me on it because I don't have it in front of me, but about 30% of the ESSER funding is supposed to be spent on SEL, social emotional learning, which is basically rebranded CRT. So I want you to, think about that as well, as there are things that are in that ESSER funding that don't directly relate to the health and safety of our students. I know that we brought up, I want to say it was the last meeting, there was the mental health app. So
Testing.
just think about that, as there's things that are written in this ESSER funding that we don't know exactly where this money is going to go or what's going to be brought in when you kind of sell off, our students for the money. So
If the board allows me 2 minutes so I can certainly provide some enlightenment and information that is absolutely untrue. You cannot conflate critical race theory with social-emotional learning. While critical race theory was developed more than 2 or 3 decades ago as a course that should be taught to lawyers in law school because they wanted to make sure that there was some
Hey, if you're watching, do you hear audio?
around
I
how
don't hear
individuals
anything.
were being treated in the criminal justice system.
I'm gonna
Social-emotional
reset
learning
everything.
came out of Yale University.
I don't hear anything on
and
my end, do you?
Social-emotional learning was intended to make sure that we are not only acknowledging, but supporting the socio-emotional well-being of not only students, but the adults who serve them, right? So it has nothing with one's belief, with one's race. It's a socially emotional learning push. Let me also add that there are 5 tenets that support social-emotional learning. And there's a plethora of research that speaks to the fact that currently, without
Okay,
social-emotional learning, and
Like I
this
said, I'm
has
gonna
been in
step
place
away, but I'm
in
gonna leave this
schools
here.
for
I just
many
wanted to make sure we
years,
had audio
a
before
lot
I
of young
left.
people, when you think about suicide ideation amongst teenagers, right? When you think about anxiety and depression, the numbers would be astronomical. I want to invite members of the public and parents, if you may, to, if you ever visit our schools, to sort of sit in and maybe any of those lessons around SEL. We as a district are not teaching, we have not embraced CRT. Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has not embraced CRT, but SEL is incredibly important and helpful. So I want to encourage you all to certainly seek out additional information, or even if you have an opportunity, attend some classes where that curriculum is being taught. It's not the same, we cannot conflate.
I'm not trying to give you guys a hard time here, but I think there's a serious disconnect between what you guys think is parent choice and what we think is parent choice. To me, parent choice is not tied to a number. It's just not. It should be 0.
Any other questions, please? Questions?
I have a question. If a student contracts COVID, goes home, does whatever your health and safety plan says, and the amount of days they have to stay home. Let's say that student is vaccinated as well. That student comes back. 5 days later, has a close contact with another COVID positive case. Does that child then have to go through the quarantining again, or did they get a get out of jail free card? And because they have natural immunity. Maybe the doctor could ask that.
So I think it's answered on page 10 of the plan. It says, what do you do to quarantine? Stay home and away from other people for at least 5 days after your last contact with the person who has COVID.
Even if you've had just had COVID, sir, and then come back to school and unfortunately have have a close contact with another COVID, you still have to go back and do all that. Is that correct, doctor? Even though they have natural immunity and the vaccine per se? Okay, sorry. So they would have, you're disregarding natural immunity with a case that has already been in the book and comes back. Now that child, it has a close contact. Does that child get sent back home? Am I understanding that right? Did I miss that part? There is such a thing as natural immunity, correct, doctor? With viruses? That's been a long history, correct, of knowledge. Gary, do you have those answers, sir?
Just receive additional information. We do follow the 90-day natural immunity plan. I'll have to get additional information of what that means, though.
But as of right now, I mean, has that happened in this school where a kid has come back from COVID and then bam, got hit with another 10 days or whatever?
We have had students and teachers who've had multiple quarantines, unfortunately. It's part of the vicissitudes or challenges of COVID. Yeah.
Right, but does that
moving
make
forward, is your question moving forward, how are we going to treat that?
Does that make sense? It doesn't make sense.
I received that. But moving forward, we're certainly going to look into how to make adjustments to our close contact or contact tracing.
Has that been a talk of this whole time with your COVID team? I mean, this is going on. I mean, you've been here, what, 1.5 years, sir?
Dr. Roberts, can you clarify what you meant by the 90-day? Because I think what you're saying is that in the past, if someone was in a 90-day window, they did not have to quarantine again. Is that correct?
That was shared, yes, and that was shared from a member of the pandemic team. Yes, that's correct. I don't have the details in it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So again, that's the study session tonight. Dr. Roberts is taking a lot of notes, a lot of feedback, and we have the board meeting. I'm sure there'll be additional questions answered there. And that's why the study session is to hear questions and input from the public and from the board.
They're all good questions. Let me clarify. Mrs. Lupacek, I just got a text that says yes. You're absolutely right. Thank you for that.
Becky, Liddell, please. Questions? Can someone give her the microphone, please? Becky. Well, Becky didn't have an opportunity. Lou, you already talked. So let her
Just give me a second. Yeah. Okay, so I just want to clarify, is there a date that the ARP funds need to be spent by?
Yeah.
Was it 12/24/24? Is that what I heard? Or was it 12/24/22?
Mrs. Becky, this is Janine. And Tim, correct me if I'm wrong. I looked that up today. It was 12/31/24 is when the funds allocated from the American Rescue Plan had to be spent. Now, how that works in with our ESSER funds and what we're spending it on, how that works, Mr. Attorney Senate can speak to that.
Okay.
So, depends on the statute, but some of it had to be committed versus spent. But I think the last date that at least I saw was the end of 2025.
12/31/24?
25.
25.
Yeah,
Okay.
because some of it, you had to commit it. In other words, you had to have a contractor, you had to have,
So it had to
something
be earmarked,
that had to be earmarked.
basically.
That's
Yes.
good. That's a good word.
Okay. Okay. So in regards to the health and safety plan, though, so if we're saying that the funds need to be earmarked by a certain date and then spent by a future date, why can we not put an expiration date on this health and safety plan if we know that there is a date involved? Why leave it open-ended instead of having just a date that says this is when it's going to take place? You know, it'll be voted, signed on, whatever happens next Monday. Why can't we have a date that says, you know what, we're going to just wipe this whole thing out by the end of the ARP funds being earmarked and spent?
That's a good.
That's something, yeah, that's something I would absolutely love to see on this plan because it seems like we're not going to be, you know, getting rid of it altogether. I understand that. But at the same time, at some point, those funds are going to run out. And why not put an expiration date on this health and safety plan as it is?
I agree with you. And it's a good question for your congressman and your senator who passed this legislation, that they need to address that issue. And if they, and they're the people that have to address the issue. They're the individuals that have to set the sunset. We can't do it. So
You can't do it?
we can't set a sunset in regard to federal legislation. The ARP ESSER funds is a federal law that established by your senators and your congressmen. They need to set the sunset. They need to amend the statute and identify what the sunset is. And so we can't do that. You have to go to your congressman and your senator and say, establish a sunset. Establish a sunset in regard to this requirement. They
Okay.
haven't, as far as I know, they haven't done it. And I know
Okay.
Janine tried to find it today, and I don't recall ever seeing a sunset date.
Okay.
If there is one out there, then I need to find it. But
Okay. Does that mean that we have to submit this HSP every single year until our congressman makes a decision or on a sunset date?
yeah, which is,
No, we're not.
we're
He's
not doing
saying that.
anything.
It's-
Okay.
Is it fair to say that's a living document and we're going to revisit it probably, if not quarterly, at least twice a year?
We're required, I'm
and-
sorry, we're required to look at it every 6 months.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, we're required to look at it every 6 months.
Okay, so twice a year. So I see what you're saying, the 2%, which is a small number, and you're saying is it 2%, can we get rid of it at the end of December of 24? I'm saying in 6 months, if everything's the way it should be, maybe we take it to 3% or 5% or whatever. But as long as we're re-looking at it every 6 months or quicker, this meeting was called quickly in order to get this going, then it has to be a living document, it has to be modified. We're not getting rid of the safety plan after this, but it certainly needs to be modified as time goes on. Hopefully it'll be, lightened up or whatever term you want to use, but we have to keep track of it instead of having just a sunset date. Unfortunately, that's just the world we live in, the way it operates.
And we have followed that course. We have modified this document several times as things have changed.
January was the time
Right.
previous to this.
So, yeah, the last amendment was, as set forth in the
January 10th.
June, it was initially adopted June 28th, and it was affirmed on January 10th, and now subject to reapproval on February 28th. We are looking at it on a regular basis.
So, sorry, you said this is federal, right? So we need to, so you're saying because the money was accepted by this board, but we can't do anything in this room. We are the ones who are going to have to go to our federal representatives and senators and tell them to change whatever legislation or guidance or whatever it is in order for this board to be freed of the obligation to have this particular health and safety plan and review it every 6 months for infinity.
That's
Correct? That's
Yes.
correct?
Does the ARP Act, as it was called, and the United States Department of Education rules required this health and safety.
Okay,
The
thank
ARP
you.
Act itself required this health and safety.
Thank you.
So my children and I haven't experienced this. So I'm just wondering, when a child is in quarantine, what type of instructional learning are they receiving during their quarantine period? Is it not?
Ma'am,
Okay, can we please have?
ma'am, I know you want to respond, but actually this is a question for the board, not you.
So what kind of instructional learning are these quarantine kids receiving while they're forced to be out of school?
They're learning opportunities for students, which includes communication between the home, parents at home and the school. Certainly, there are recorded lessons, so there's some attempt at times of between both synchronous and asynchronous teaching and learning, depending on the school your child.
So there's no opportunity to live stream, because I know there's school districts within Erie County, and I know people that have experienced this that get to live stream for the 5 days they're in class. They're not missing out on the opportunity to learn, and mom and dad aren't being the teacher other than to say, okay, it's time for lunch, or like, why doesn't Mill Creek have that?
Great questions. We've offered that on occasion throughout the school year. So it varied, not with any level of consistency, but certainly we have offered that as well.
And have parents taken it up? Because I mean, if I was in that position, I take up on live streaming over the mom who is not a teacher.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Yes, some of our parents have taken it and students have taken advantage of it. I believe that most of our parents, during times when we've either had to move towards 100% virtual, or when our students are.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say 100% virtual is different, because then you have an entire school all on the same page and dealing with the same thing. I'm talking about 5 days of quarantining where my child is missing out what the 20 kids in the classroom are learning, and my kid never gets sick. Why is my child not getting the same education for those 5 days?
Well, we've offered some amount of supports, but certainly not necessarily always synchronous or asynchronous teaching for the student.
Okay.
Anyone else who'd like to ask a question that hasn't asked a question? I know we're getting the second, third rounds now, and we've been at this for over an hour and a half, and I do appreciate the public comment, but at some point.
Okay,
you know, we
quick,
need to move
yeah,
on, so.
quick question. Does everyone on the board, and I'm sure that the doctor could answer this question, what's the difference between a vaccine and an inoculation? It's question number one. Question number two, has anyone questioned why the child vaccine, and it's inappropriate and it's wrong to call it a vaccine because it is not a vaccine? Why did Pfizer stop manufacturing that particular so-called vaccine? Now, I'm a pharmacist for over 40 years, and I know when a pharmaceutical company.
Mr. Aliota, is it a question about the
Yeah,
health and safety
a question,
plan,
okay.
not about vaccination?
What is the
please?
difference between a vaccine and inoculation, number one?
Is that in the health
Okay,
and safety
question.
plan, please?
Pardon?
Ask a question concerning the health and safety plan, not about vaccinations. That's not what we're here for tonight. That's a different platform, it's a different topic or different agenda.
Okay.
What question do you have
The health and
concerning
safety plan.
the structure of the health and safety?
Right.
Please.
Those are guidelines, recommendations,
This is
correct?
the plan we're following, proposed plan that we're going to follow.
Are those recommendations and guidelines? And for who?
The plan is the plan that the superintendent and the administration and this board will follow in regard to our school.
Okay. So in that health and safety plan, there is a statement in there that directs parents, students to wear a mask inside the home. Is that correct?
I think there's a recommendation, if you're experiencing COVID, yeah.
Okay, so now the school board directors who determine this health and safety plan are directing citizens, children and students to wear a mask in the house, in their own home.
We're not directing that they wear a mask inside your, if you'd let me finish, Mr. Aliota. We are providing information that's a recommendation from the CDC, and we're attempting to answer the questions that are listed in the plan itself. And so it's information that we're providing as part of the
So it's a recommendation.
It's information that we're providing as part of the plan.
I understand the various definitions from a layperson to an attorney. I understand that. These are recommendations. If you're putting out to the population, to the community, to the parents, that they have to wear a mask in the house, in their private residence, that's dictatorship.
I
That's
think
tyranny.
You've asked that question now twice, and we've answered. Thank you very much.
You answered my question very lawyerly.
That's my job.
Okay, thank you all, and there's no other additional questions from the public. So with that, we can move on to, and thank you for all your input. Dr. Roberts, I saw you take a lot of notes. And again, this will be at the board meeting on Monday night, the 28th. Visitor section. So we have a number of speakers, as always, for a number of people. They have always asked, and anyone who pre-registers before 3 p.m., 5 days before any scheduled board meeting, will be afforded the 5 minutes to address the board. After 3 p.m., the speakers will have 3 minutes to address the board. These notices appear on the website with each meeting announcement. We have many speakers who'd like to speak this evening. Many are for 3 minutes, many for 5, some are for 3. Again, may I ask all speakers to, upon reaching the podium, if you are pre-registered, please state your name, or your address is on the record, and your topic. All others that wish to speak who do not pre-register or would like to register this evening for the 3 minutes, please state your name, the address for the record, and your topic before starting your remarks. Please limit your remarks to the 5 or 3 minutes allotted. If you do not use or need the entire 3 minutes, please conclude your remarks early, so other speakers who do not pre-register will have a chance to address. Once again, I ask all in attendance to please use reasonable and respectful decorum, and I ask all speakers in the audience to refrain from abusive, threatening, or condescending language. Please address the board and administration in its entirety without singling out any specific individual or individuals. Any speaker that does not adhere to these requests will be asked to step away from the podium, and any audience member will be asked to exit the meeting. Thank you. The first 5 minutes speaker is Kelly Gilmore. Yeah, 5 minutes, Kelly.
Kelly Gilmore, 6059 Estate Drive. Janine brought up some good stuff about the pre-K and 2 to 5-year-olds. And I did have some data that there has been since the mask mandates on those children, there has actually been over a 350% surge in childhood speech delays. So I would definitely consider that in your research over the next week before you guys decide to continue masking the 2 to 5-year-olds. The CDC also has quietly lowered the standards for speech in early childhood development this week. They're saying that children should now know less than 50 words at 30 months than 24 months. So take a look at that as well, as they kind of just like snuck that in there, that the kids are going to now know less words because they haven't been able to develop the speech in the last 2 years. All right, short and simple tonight. I think you guys know where I stand in regard to the masking mitigation efforts. I do believe that you'll do the right thing and vote to end the masking mandates. I would prefer if it was parent choice at 100%, but I don't think that that's going to be happening right now. I'm sure you've heard the phrase, a little too late. The damage has already been done, and that's why I did proceed with filing a claim against your insurance policy yesterday. The harm that's caused to my children is something that can't be fixed by just reversing the current policies that are in place. My claim and some that may follow will ensure accountability takes place for the last 2 years. This has been unconstitutional and illegal all along, and I'll see to it that anybody that was involved in this could be held accountable for it. I took a look at the revised health and safety plan this weekend. Contact tracing was still included and masking young children in preschool and daycare is listed. I want to know if you guys have the data on contact traced students and staff who later tested positive. That's something that I haven't heard that's been talked about. So people over the last school year that have been contact traced that have actually come back positive. I would love to know the numbers on that. And if not, if you're not tracking it, then why aren't you tracking it? You're basically, when you're contact tracing, it's discrimination. You guys know that. You got to have a brain in your head to figure that one out, right? You're punishing people, students, staff for personal medical choices with no data to back up the necessity for keeping contact tracing. And with that being said, you're also saying that vaccination works 100% of the time if you're not contact tracing the people who are vaccinated. Even the physician that came up tonight did say that, you know, you can contract COVID being vaccinated and you can pass it. For a district that wants to promote and push equality, that's the exact opposite of what we're doing. Practice what you preach and treat everybody the same and end contact tracing with the revised health and safety plan. I've seen many schools drop their mandates and parents thanking them for doing so. Unfortunately, I don't think I can thank you guys for dropping anything at this point. Things I can thank you for would be opening my eyes up to the deep-seated corruption that exists throughout the school district, not just this one, but throughout them in general. I'll thank you for unleashing my instinctive mother bear to protect my children. I'll thank you for pushing me to come to these meetings that I never came to before, voicing my opinion through in-person and email, and for developing an extensive network of parents throughout the community so that this can never happen to our children ever again.
Thank you. Next speaker is Eric Page. Is Eric here? Eric? You have 5 minutes. Oh.
Right. Hi, my name is Eric Page. I'm president of the Turning Point USA McDowell chapter here in Mill Creek and on McDowell. And my main point with this whole mask mandate from the beginning is I believe in personal freedom and personal choice. And I think any of my teachers can attest to, I'm a history student. History is my passion. That's where I lie in. And this past President's Day, I spent many of hours watching different videos on different presidents. And what I've seen through the best and the greatest leaders our country has seen is the will and the ability to stand up for what's right, even when people are telling them that they're wrong. And all I've seen since this has begun is that masking, masks work, they're 100%, no, they don't. And it's been shown through the data that masking isn't 100% effective. And it's ridiculous to suggest that students and children under the age of 18 who aren't at risk because of COVID, aren't at risk of getting infected, aren't at risk of getting hospitalized, aren't at risk of dying. There are very small anecdotal cases which are terrible, but by and large, that's not the case. So it's wrong for us to simultaneously teach our kids about history, teach our kids about the Declaration of Independence and George Washington and all these great men who stood up against the tyranny of the British, while at the same time, you are teaching tyranny within the school board by forcing kids against their will, against the will of the parents, to mask and to get these mandates in place. It's ridiculous. And I agree with what many people have said. It should not be, oh, at 2% of the student population, we have to go back to masking. No, we should get rid of masking completely. It should be at 100% getting rid of masks, not 2%. And to suggest that children ages 2 to 5 should be masked, whereas kids 5 and up shouldn't be, that's ridiculous. I'm sorry, but there is no data to suggest that would have any any statistical relevance. If you want to, you should have gotten rid of masks sooner. But if you're going to get rid of masks now, you should get rid of masks for everyone, and that's especially to the young kids who are learning, and their development is crucial now more than it will even in their high school years. So you should get rid of the masks for kids age 2 to 5. You should get rid of masks completely at the high school level. And if people want to wear masks, great. I don't care. But you should not be forcing people to wear a mask if they don't want to. That's ridiculous. That's un-American. That's anti-freedom. Thank you.
Next speaker is Lou Aliota. Lou, you have 5 minutes.
Well, good evening, board administration, students, parents, taxpayers. Very simple. Take the politics out of science, or what they claim is science. It's politics. The CDC releases a fraction of real data, which was supposed to be provided to the public. But they have come out within the past couple of weeks that they have withheld data. Compelling data. Why is that? There was another statement from the CDC and the FDA that information about the so-called vaccine will be held for 50 years. They will not release it. Why is that? Are they deception? Is there deception? I asked that question a couple of years ago. Is there deception in the reports from public officials, elected and appointed? I didn't accuse anybody, but I asked the question, is there deception? There's a question about your responsibility as school board directors. Did everyone take an oath of office? I know for a fact that solicitors, attorneys take an oath of office to uphold the Constitution of both the United States of America and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, in Pennsylvania. Have you violated that law? Have you violated that oath of office and the laws of our country and our Commonwealth? Yes, you have. And there are lawsuits now pending. And you can be removed. Let me state the 1927, February 7th, and I'm sure that Attorney Senate would be interested in this particular opinion. My attorneys and I have researched it, and my attorneys also researched from other attorney law firms. Look this up. The opinion by Justice Frazier, March 14, 1927. Directors, school board directors, who have failed or neglected to perform any required duty shall have the power to be removed, said board, or such of its members as in its opinion is proper and appoint. You could look up the actual opinion. I'm just going to give you some highlights. Everyone is aware of the 3 school board directors that were removed from San Francisco School Board. There's going to be more. Because it's very easy. What you need is 10 taxpayers. Make the complaint. What did they violate? You violated your oath of office. $250,000 charge as a penalty. and that is forthcoming. Violation. The court removes those who have violated their duty, and if such violation of duty is by one or any number less than all, no other reason or necessity appears for joining all in the proceedings, meaning you could remove one school board director or all of them.
Luke, your 5 minutes is up.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
The last signed 5-minute speaker is Jessica DiLoretto. Jessica, you have 5 minutes.
I don't really have too much to say. Just want to say great job to Eric. That was awesome. But also, really, all you have to do is look at some of the other school districts in the area. I know Butler School District, Canton McMillan, they're as large as us. They have done away with social distancing, contact tracing, masks. Quarantining is even optional if you're in a situation of close contacts, and they have no problems. I know that this is a step forward, and I appreciate this step forward, but I do think, like Mr. Lindner said earlier, we need to just go all in. Why aren't we going all in? We can scale it back if necessary, but we just need to go all in. And then again, for the pre-K kids, if you look at the CDC's recommendation, it is the same recommendation. There's no need to mask those little kids. Let them enjoy their childhood. Let them have fun when they go to school. I hope to enroll my son in pre-K if he does not have to wear a mask, because Mrs. O was a great teacher and I want him to have her. But if he's got to wear a mask, I won't do it. I won't send him there. I'll find someplace else to send him. And also, it should always be up to the parents. We should never go back to anything other than parental choice. And that's it. Thank you guys for everything.
Thank you. Thank you. We have 3-minute speaker signed up. Alyssa? 3 minutes, Alyssa. Pardon me?
So I did have a speech prepared, but I lost it. Worked a full 8-hour day being a COVID nurse, dealing with COVID patients, so I deal with COVID firsthand. A word that I hear a lot in the past 2 years from this board is empathy. And I think to myself, where are we really practicing this empathy thing? I'll tell you right now, when I walked into this building, getting rid of my COVID mask, putting on a fresh mask to be respectful to your rules, hearing school resource officers say, our house, our rules. If you don't like it, you can leave. That's not displaying any sort of empathy. Also, too, I leave it up to my kid. I sent him to school without a mask as well. He's been, and I don't want to use the word harassed, but he has been asked and made to feel like he's a poor kid. How come your mother doesn't send you to school with a mask? So I've heard in this room here that these kids like wearing masks. They want to wear masks. Not my son. I can't speak for all the kids. I'm not going to use the word bullied, but my son has been heavily influenced when he walks into school to wear a mask. He doesn't have that decision. Even though I'm a COVID nurse and I look at COVID in the face every single day, I believe that my son and these other kids around here should have the choice to put on a mask. We are getting away from the other things at hand in this district. I'm more afraid of my son getting bullied, and my son gets called a chink every single day that he is in school, a faggot, and excuse my language. I'm more worried about the psychological effects of what that does to a kid than being compliant with wearing these masks every single day. I ask the board to please get rid of these masks. Let's focus on the other more damaging psychological effects, the more bigger issues that these kids have to that these kids have to deal with every single day than wearing a mask. This only goes so far. Not worried about the lifelong consequences of if my kid gets COVID. I'm more worried about the psychological effects of bullying in the school district. Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa. Any other 3-minute speakers? Sir, come on up. Introduce yourself, address, and topic, please. Thank you.
On the street, like everybody else does here. I had a bunch of stuff written, but I'm just so tired. I'm tired. I really am. You speak about inequalities, you speak about inclusions, you speak about equity, those types of things. Your survey, when you about the masks, I believe Dr. Roberts was 54% of parents that responded was they did not think it was parent choice. It should be parent choice for masks, right? Now, if I do my goes intos right, that leaves 46% of parents, if I'm understanding this right, that want parents' choice in masks that responded, correct? I mean, if we're doing 100%, if that shakes out, we're not, there's no equity there. There's no inclusion of what those 46% of parents that wanted parents' choice in this flimsy survey. How can that be? I mean, just a little under 50% of the parents? And we want to include all this, you're not listening to them. This is school board sanctioned child abuse at this point. And I hate to have to say that. Have you guys surveyed the children in school? Have you guys talked to the children in school? Do you believe the children want to wear masks and that when you tell them, hey, it's parents' choice, you don't have to wear a mask, do you think they're going to say, oh, no, we want to wear masks? Do you think they're going to say that? You sleep with that at night. You know they're not going to say that. They're going to be ripping masks off. They're going to be happy as heck. Why are you doing this? You're not gaining anything. You're not gaining any protection. You're causing so much mental anguish on these children. This is school board sanctioned child abuse. At this point, I will give you 2020. That was a mess. I'll even give you part of 2021. Okay? I wouldn't want to be in your shoes. I wouldn't want to do it. But come on, guys. This is school board sanctioned child abuse. You are not gaining any protection.
Thank you. Any other 3-minute speakers? Thank you. 3 minutes.
I'm Aslan, 4603 Tulane Avenue. Interesting that CRT got brought up earlier, and Dr. Roberts kind of gave a little quick version of what his take of it was. What I will say is CRT is a lie, and if anyone thinks it's not, then I would love to debate you. But further than that, I have a few tweets that I'd like to share from a Dr. Nicole Price, who is co-founder with Dr. Roberts in a company called Lively Paradox. I'm sorry. But here's just a few of the tweets that, all the public can see. USPS delivered a neighbor's package to my house and why I don't want to take it down there. ? Be just my luck. They and then put in quotes, fearful for their lives. Ain't gonna be no say her name over here. Here's another one. She says them, then says Black Lives Matter is an issue, and while I'm at it, why can't I call you a It begins with an N. So, you know, I don't believe that our district is racist. I don't believe that it needs all of this brought in. And when I read things like this is who I think is racist. Okay? Not us, not this school district. So I really, really hope that we're not going to bring this in. I think it's already started with the teachers, but I really, really, really pray that you guys don't do that. And I will debate anyone on CRT any day of the week, even you, Dr. Roberts, because it is wrong. It is so wrong, so wrong. We will be doing a disservice for years to come by doing that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other, we have one speaker online. Consider. Sandra?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please state your name, address, and topic, please.
Hi, my name is Sandra Sawan. I'm at 5033 Walnut Ridge, and I'd like to speak on the masks. I have two simple, quick things to say. First, if I'm not mistaken, I was looking today at the CDC website as well as the state website. It appears that Erie County is still in a high spread phase of COVID, and the CDC recommends that everyone remain masked inside whether or not they are vaccinated under these circumstances. Second, I have two children currently in school. One of them asked me this morning if they can go virtual if the masking becomes parent choice, because this child is used to going to school with students that he already has to protect his lunch because people will come over and literally spit in his food. And now he's concerned because he is not sitting several feet away from people in several of his classes. He's concerned that people are going to be sitting too close to him, and he knows that some of these kids already come to school sick, and that concerns him. I mentioned to my younger child who's in elementary school this evening, because I'm trying to prepare them for seeing people at school without masks. I mentioned to her that it's going to be probably mask optional in the near future. And she was very shocked and asked me if I could stop it. So I just wanted to relay the opinions of my two children and myself and ask that I know that a mask-free period is coming, and I know that a mask optional period is coming, and I don't dispute that it should. I think that we are beginning to get to a point where we can consider that, but I don't think we're quite there yet, and I don't think the CDC considers that we're there yet. And I think we need to take into consideration the time that we're in and the fact that we may be done with COVID, but COVID's not quite done with us. It's coming. We're almost there, and I would hate to cut short the time that we need to be in masks. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Sandra. Okay, I see no other speakers online. One last call to speakers. Ms. Roseanne?
My name is Troy. I'm on 2862 West 33rd. Good evening. I'd like to note some words that were said last week. I'll quote, "I have never and will never disregard, suppress, or oppress anyone's personal beliefs. And if I inadvertently ever do so, I'd be apologetic." My question is that true? If so, I believe an apology is due. You suppressed our parental rights, and you've oppressed our children with 2 years of masking when you had no legal right to do so, and nothing scientific to back it up. You suppressed every factual piece of evidence or documentation we've given you right down to the law which you said you'd always follow as leadership in the district. Speaking of leadership, where is it? To me, leadership is not mocking parents or disregarding their feelings on what they believe is best for their children. It is not having a drop in attendance, segregating children based on vaccine status, or isolating kids for 10, 15, or as much as 30 days, especially when they're not sick. Leadership is not a drop in test scores or lack of staff. Excuse me. Segregating children based on who has better grades in lunch lines, referring to parents as bullies who voice their opinions in school board meetings. Denying religious exemptions and illegally punishing healthy students and staff are just a few of the things that has taken place in this district. Things that this district, from my knowledge, never were really big issues prior to a change in leadership. We've never seen this type of division within our district, and we all have to question what has changed other than COVID. Effective leadership adapts and overcomes obstacles. We can no longer accept the idea or excuse that our children aren't accepting the education they should be because our leadership is a victim of circumstances, therefore making our children victims of circumstances. It is up to you to adapt and overcome the circumstances and stop acting like you're all victims because of COVID. Or step aside and let someone else do your job who won't make excuses, but rather take accountability for their own failures. The bullying has came from your destructive COVID policies. Every and any decision you made in relation to COVID has been political and money driven, not science. And that's okay because that's been wrong too. You try to intimidate the parents by having police presence or intimidate them with words from a solicitor who apparently doesn't even know the law. Parental choice is just that. It is not tied to a number. One last thing, there seems to be a miscommunication or misrepresentation of the lawsuit that was filed by us parents throughout Pennsylvania. The PDE and Noah Ortega have been sued over the masking protocols that covers every single district in Pennsylvania, including this one.
Thank you, thank you. No other speakers are online? Any other last call? Okay, moving on to item 4, old business. Any old business? Item 5, new business. Any new business? Item 6, school board remarks.
Yes, please.
Please speak in the microphone too. So.
This past week, our superintendent responded to a personal attack that started in a social media post. He responded openly, with honesty, integrity, and responsibility. The untruths, misleading information, the disrespect, and the prejudice must stop. I am so proud of the outpouring of support for Dr. Roberts from the Mill Creek community as a result of this. Dr. Roberts, I am very sorry you had to endure this attack and others. And I hope that the silver lining is the understanding of the widespread support that you have. The social media comments to the Erie News Now article and your letter were glowing, supportive, and complimentary of you and what you are doing in Mill Creek. Many, many community members recognize the integrity, commitment, and expertise that you offer to our students, staff, and community. We're very fortunate to have you as our leader in this district. Thank you for all that you do, and know that the community is grateful. Let's keep moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Winchell. Any other board comments?
I'd like to make one comment.
Yes.
First of all, thank you everybody for showing up tonight, especially you, Dr. Lewis. You're not, you don't have to be here, but you are, and you take the questions and you field them. And I really do appreciate it. And I respect all of your knowledge and everything that you've brought forth to our pandemic team and the board. So thank you for taking the time out of your day and answering our questions.
Thank you, Janine. Anyone else?
I'd like to make a couple comments and carry on to what Mrs. Winchell was saying. It seems that this the argument over masks has moved into personal attacks on Attorney Senate, Dr. Roberts, and this board in general. We were given a letter last week that said they are going to file a claim against our liability insurance, and we're going to take your cars, your house, your jobs, your retirement. These are personal attacks, and agreed, they're unacceptable, they're out of bounds. As far as Dr. Roberts, he's one of the most genuine people I have ever met in my life. He's an incredible leader, but even a better person. So the people that are out there attacking this man, I'm so happy that he is leading this school district. You have my 100% support, Dr.
Any other remarks? Before I turn over to Dr. Roberts, I have a few, very well said, Janine and Shirley and Jason. But the last 2 years have been difficult for many different reasons. For some, it was the loss of a loved one, a friend, a colleague. Others, there was a disruption of their lives, family, work, and their day-to-day normalcy. Tonight, we're revising our health and safety plan and moving forward. And we're moving forward. We know for some, it will be too late. For others, too early. And for some, it will never be good enough. As the eternal optimist, I always see the glass half full. And I hope for those who don't, I am optimistic and hopeful that for those individuals, they feel that they have a little bit more water in their glass than they did a few weeks or a month ago. Please join, please join the MILLCREEK School District and other school districts in Northwest PA in welcoming the smiling faces back to the classroom in the next few weeks, and wish our students, families, and staff the very best for them over the last 4 months of the school year. Dr. Roberts.
Thank you, President Mitchell. Certainly want to express tremendous gratitude to all of our parents who came tonight to our work session. I've said this from the inception of my tenure here, and I will continue to say it. We cannot do this work without you. And while we may have a difference of opinions and our perspectives, and we all have very different lived experiences, I value your input. I respect your choices. I will continue to lead from this orientation. We are certainly at a place that many probably could not envision that we will get to. March 13th of 2020, when we moved towards the very first closure, when COVID was at its inception, there was so much uncertainty. But yet here we are today. I have to say that I've had many exciting and celebratory days in this district. And today is one of those. I'm celebrating today because I heard genuine care, interest, and disagreement from our parents in the audience and those online. And it's the way for us to move forward. Let's have a difference of thought and perspective, but land on the best decision that will move our district towards becoming one of the top 5 highest performing districts in the state. That is a part of the big vision. The teachers and staff, the school leadership team, and I can certainly speak to for the board, are all committed to just having a relentless focus on improving student academic outcomes, providing them with safe environments. That's what this is about. Let's continue to do that. Final reason that I'm excited and celebrating today is because I had the opportunity to share with you all, based on months and months of input, and certainly after our review of the data, that we have revised our health and safety plan. And I'm coming confidently on Monday with a lot of hope and optimism that my recommendation, official recommendation to the board, will be well received. And on Tuesday, March 1st, our parents and our students will have the option as to whether or not they should wear a mask. You know, it is said that when you are getting closer to some glory, the attacks become much more severe. I have to tell you, one of my favorite poems was written in 1875 by British poet and author William Ernest Henley. And William Ernest Henley titled the poem Invictus. Invictus in Latin means unconquerable and undefeated. With the attacks or the vitriol or the unnecessary criticism, not just towards me, but towards the teachers and staff who serve in this district, we come to you with a spirit of Invictus. Not because of our own personal desires or pursuits, but because every single day, regardless of where you stand, you entrust us with 6,800 students because you believe in us. I encourage you not to be distracted. I encourage you not to perpetuate falsities, erroneous information, and falsehoods. Our children are really watching. They're looking at us. And they will remember these 2 or 3 years. I truly believe, because I'm in the schools weekly and our teachers and staff can tell you this, our students eventually will show that they were the most resilient generation of young people. Let me end by saying thank you again, and indulge me as I read one stanza from William Ernest Henley's Invictus. And I'll have you know that he wrote this poem when he was at the lowest point of his life. He was diagnosed with, I think, some sort of bone marrow infection. Had to have one leg amputated. Dr. Lewis and Alyssa in the medical profession in 1875, I don't think anyone would want to have a leg amputated. But in his hospital bed, it is said that he wrote the poem Invictus, and the one stanza that stands out to me today is, in the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. And under the bludgeoning of chance, my head is bloody, but I'm bowed. I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve this district. I am unbowed, undefeated, and will continue to extend that invitation to those individuals who are attacking, who are critical. Please have lunch with me. I know it sounds really pitiful at this time that I'm begging folks to have lunch or breakfast with me, because I believe if you do, you'll be able to look beyond my phenotype or what you believe or who you believe I am. That's just me. Let's talk. Let's work together. Thank you. Thank you, board.
Thank you. Item 7, before the adjournment, I'd like to remind the board there will be an executive session after this study session for reasons of personnel and safety. So with that, item 7, can I have a motion for adjournment?
Motion, Kim.
Second? Second, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, nay? We're adjourned.
Hey guys, it's